Hello, welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I'm your host, Corey Nathan, and it is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group. That's a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Also, very grateful to our friends at the Village Square and Mesa Wealth Management for supporting our programming. We have information about our sponsors in the show notes. And now let's get right to it. I am so happy to be joined today by Christopher Armitage. Did I get that right? Armitage?
Close, Armitage.
Armitage. Okay, Armitage. Damn, I asked you beforehand, and then it's like Armitage. Christopher Armitage is a U.S. Air Force veteran with an MS in Homeland Security and undergraduate degrees in criminal justice and psychology. Christopher is a researcher, a former law enforcement officer, and is the author of a number of books just this year, including his latest offering, Intro to Soft Secession, as well as some other projects that I guess we'll be talking about. And then also, folks, listeners of this show might remember just, I think it was a week or two ago, where I cited Chris's work pretty extensively from his excellent Substack, the Existentialist Republic. Chris, this is awesome, man. I'm so glad to be with you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I haven't done a ton of interviews since I ran for office a few years ago and wanted to just cloister myself away and write. And I spent a lot of time just ignoring politics and spiraling in a nihilistic despair. And thankfully, quality mental health and behavioral health care from the Department of Veterans Affairs that is unfortunately degraded this year. But I've gotten myself to a place where I'm ready to really, this whole year, I've dedicated myself to the craft of writing, and now I've found myself advocating for some ideas that I think can really do some good. And instead of feeling broken down or in pain, I feel strong and hopeful.
That's awesome. And writing prolifically, as I mentioned. So I want to get into all of that. But first things first, man. So from what I understand, you're a Jersey boy like me. Where in Jersey are you from?
Well, I was born in Newark. Both my brothers were born in Long Branch, and I lived in Asbury Park, Shrewsbury Township, and Neptune.
Oh, okay. So if you were my age, I probably would have wrestled you in high school. I was from
I was a wrestler.
Are you really? Well, so what weight class were you?
103.
Oh, dude. Okay, so we had arguably one of the state's best 103 pounders in the history of New Jersey, a guy named Stevie Rivera. In fact, Stevie's son just wrestled. He represented the Puerto Rico team in the last Olympics. But yeah, I went to Manalapan High School. I wrestled. Junior year I was 119, and then senior year I was 125. But yeah, two towns over, man. But Neptune, when I was in high school, they had the holiday tournament that basically kicked off the whole season, right? Did they still do that?
Yeah, yeah. I shared a high school with Bam Bam Bigelow, the professional wrestler. No, I didn't go at the same time as him, of course. But yeah, and my coach, he actually went to Blair Academy, which you're for a wrestler from New Jersey, you got to know
Yeah,
Blair.
absolutely. They crush it. And
Yeah.
actually, Long Branch too. Long Branch had Sam Cole, I want to say, who was a three-time state champ and then came in second his senior year. It was his only loss in his entire high school career. But he was, I want to say he was like 10. He was 103, but then like whatever the next 108 or 109, whatever it was. I can't believe I'm talking. I haven't talked about New Jersey wrestling in forever. This is awesome. But now you're living in state of Washington. So take me. I know there's a lot in between, but like, how did you end up in Washington?
Well, when I was 18 years old, I got stationed at Fairchild Air Force Base. I was military police, so federal law. A lot of people don't know military police are technically federal law enforcement officers, and in the Air Force, there's a huge variety in the type of roles that you can fulfill as military police. Some of it is just more like traditional soldier type stuff. And then some of it is full law enforcement, and then some of it's nuclear security, and even roles like being an investigator or a military working dog handler. And so I served in the Air Force for almost a decade. I got stationed at Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington. There's a article if you Google "Who Says Cops Aren't Funny?" Chris Armitage, you'll find an article about me doing stand-up comedy as like a 21-year-old senior airman. Uh,
So
uh,
did
most
you join the Air Force right out of high school or?
I did. Yeah, I didn't want to go to college. I knew I hated high school, so why would I want to go to college? And then I
So
did
for a
my
guy that didn't want to
associate.
go to college, you did a lot of college. What the hell? So, oh, I was curious about that. So when did you start doing your undergraduate work and your extensive like a couple of graduate degrees, right?
Just one master's degree, but I did my associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree while active duty Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was challenging. I didn't have much of a social life, but that's just, I mean, that's, part of like people ask how much I write as much as I do, and I would call it a low grade mental illness. Honestly, like not to me, like I have to be working all the time, and I've had, like I said, I've had a lot of great therapy and performed. It's very interesting how you can perform very, very high and receive a lot of praise and a lot of success and still have things that are unhealthy within you that drive you towards that. And so thankfully, I've been able to receive some nice socialist healthcare to help me become a healthier version of that.
I should look into that because you're preaching to the choir, or I should say the dysfunctional choir. Because I was diagnosed bipolar, a certain form of bipolar, and when I'm in a certain range, it's like my superpower. I'm super productive, but it doesn't mean that there isn't the Mr. Hyde that exists still. That I'm prone to have psychotic breaks. Like it's just I have to be very diligent and apply a set of tools and exercise practices on a daily basis to make sure that I stay within healthy ranges. And even when I'm doing that diligently, there's still vulnerabilities. I'm constantly reminded of that, but it's so worth it, man, to like investigate that. Part of it is just for my family's sake. To if I'm being completely candid, it's not fair for them in a way that they have to put up with these other seasons of what folks with my mental makeup, emotional makeup go through. So I applaud you for being open about that. And I might pick your brain about different resources because I know I've not tapped the well fully. So by the way, before I forget, we're catching you like in between. You're traveling right now. So for folks who are watching, Chris is. Are you at O'Hare?
Yeah, I'm at Chicago O'Hare Airport. I actually just did a public radio interview a few days ago and then ended up here with Chicago Public Radio.
Oh,
And now I'm in Chicago and I'm talking to these people at the airport because I had a 24-hour layover. And so I decided just to here and do that. And so I've been like actually having very fascinating conversations about what's going on in Chicago from the perspective of people right here. But yes, I'm at Chicago O'Hare Airport. Because I wanted to go on a trip and then there was a delay, etc.
so I mean, since you mention it, take us on the ground in Chicago. What are different Chicagoans saying about the state of the city and the presence of ICE troops and National Guard being deployed? Like, what's going on in the city, and what are Chicagoans saying about it?
Well, and these are the highlights. This is all anecdotal. These are probably the half dozen people who I just can't help myself from trying to get to know. Uh, Mayor Brandon Johnson is doing an amazing job. He, from like an advocacy perspective, is one of the top mayors in the country right now. I do want to give a shout out to Mayor Lisa Brown in Spokane. The times make the person. You can like rise to an occasion when it's more serious, but Mayor Brown in Spokane, I think, is one of the most highly qualified, overqualified mayors in the country. But Mayor Brandon Johnson is out here calling for general strikes, and these employees here, they've all been union before. They've all been part of organized labor. They've all been part of trying to get involved in activist communities, and they still are. And they're ready for the fight, and they are horrified by what's going on. And when I did that public radio interview a week ago, I was very candid about the facts of the situation, much of the writing that I do, and these people are on board for that. That's what's speaking to them is the situation is dire. We are not losing democracy. Federal democracy is pretty much dead. The Constitution is dead. These are people who recognize that that's what it is on the ground. Is we have people we expect to never have consequences, and we have a purged law or federal justice system, and all three branches have been corrupted fully of the federal government. But they're here on the ground talking about mutual aid. They're talking about supporting one another. They're talking about documenting things. and they're talking about parallel structures that will help make resilience when as the federal government cuts different resources.
So there's a lot more about your background that I'd love to learn, but since you brought it up, there's a lot of words that are being used for the direction this administration is taking the country: authoritarianism, dictatorship, autocracy, fascism. One that John Roush used, which I thought was very apt to complement some of these words: patrimonialism. What do you think best describes the type of government the Trump administration is trying and in some ways succeeding in taking us?
Well, I want to start by saying, my publication is called the Existentialist Republic. Existentialism is an important part of my operating system for navigating reality. Soren Kierkegaard, founder of existentialism, he said that which labels me negates me.
Okay.
Labeling things can create a lot of blind spots for us. It can create weaknesses tactically and strategically, where we start thinking that we have too much of a better grasp on a situation than we actually do. The Dunning-Kruger effect starts to take hold, where you
Yeah.
think you know something, but you don't know enough to know how little you know. And so all of these titles, autocracy, fascism, kleptocracy, plutocracy, oligarchy, they all fit to varying degrees, but it is incredible how much success you can find in communications and in bringing people on board with your ideas when you remove the titles, when you remove the labels, and you speak to values, and you do it with conviction, because that's one of the biggest failings that I've seen from people in the establishment in fighting back against whatever you want to call this. I'm going to call it bad. That's what I'm
Okay.
going to call it.
Yeah, yeah. That is interesting. So, okay, so now I want to pull on a couple different threads. One is I'm fascinated by um, existentialist. I mean, your Substack is the Existentialist Republic. So, what do you mean when you identify? And forgive me, maybe I'm contradicting myself because, as you said, Kierkegaard says that which labels me negates me. So, I'm not trying to negate you, but I'm trying to understand what do you mean when you say existentialist, and how did you arrive at that understanding?
Well, contradictions are natural, and I use labels for tons of things because they're very helpful. So, who is it? Walt Whitman? I think, do I contradict myself very well? I contradict myself, or whoever said it. But yeah, of course, I label myself as an existentialist. I love existentialist philosophy. It's done a lot of good for me. A lot of people don't know Martin Luther King Jr. considered himself a Christian existentialist.
Wow.
Soren Kierkegaard was his favorite existentialist. And also, Soren Kierkegaard, even though he was around hundreds of years ago, supported things like women's rights, which is pretty cool. And he was very critical of the church, despite being a Christian. And he pointed out a lot of Christian hypocrisies in ways that are nearly identical. It might as well be tweets that people are making now, and he was doing this hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
But the way that it forms for me is, there's a few different facets of existentialism that really feel relevant. The biggest one is Sisyphus, Camus' myth of Sisyphus, that,
Right.
he's pushing the rock up the hill and it's his punishment. And what does that mean for the a priori meaning of his existence? So does meaning precede essence? Your living life, was there a meaning prior to it? I do not believe so.
Oh.
But and I grew up Mormon, actually, LDS. My dad was Catholic and he converted to the LDS church. My mom was Jewish and she converted with him. And then my older brother's father's Muslim, and
Wow.
I've almost married a Hindu. I've been all over the map with religions, but I do not believe that there is a meaning that exists before you're alive. But when I look at the myth of Sisyphus, I see this story. You're here and there isn't an inherent meaning, but you can give things meaning. You can
Mm.
make them matter. And choosing to do that is sometimes absurd. That's so myth of Sisyphus. We're talking Sartre, but we can go to Camus and talk about the overall meaning of uh, how we engage with the absurd. The absurd being the idea that we have needs within us that the universe is not inherently able to fulfill. So you're born with a need
Yeah.
that
So
there
would
is
you
not an
consider somebody
inherent.
like Solzhenitsyn at least partially existentialist?
Yeah, that's Gulag Archipelago, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that You know, existentialism is particularly important in fascist and authoritarian life, like living under these regimes,
Yeah.
because you're realizing that there isn't a safety net for you. There isn't a certainty. I mean, if you were born 20, 30, 40, when I was a kid, I was just like, yes, of course, the United States is going to be doing great. The world is going to keep getting better and we're going to be
Yeah.
all right. And
Yeah.
adults know what they're doing. And, Kurt Vonnegut said, the real terror is realizing that the people you went to high school with are now running the country, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we now know that that's not the case. In fact, a couple of days ago, you had a piece, 108 steps the Trump administration has taken to destroy America. Now, this isn't hyperbolic. You actually itemized these things and documented. In fact, you opened up, or maybe the second or third paragraph, you say this is documentation of policies implemented between January 20th and October 29th this year that caused measurable harm to Americans' health, safety, economic security, or civil rights. Can I don't need you to go through all 108, but just it's kind of like for reality's sake, it's like you can't deny reality. So I'd love for you to itemize a few of these.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also I just want to say, a core part of my process that I think is resonating with people is doing everything I can to bring receipts, to be fact-based, to use primary sources, and something that's so desperately missing in journalism.
Yeah. So,
People
by the
just,
way, for listeners, just to underscore what you're saying, at the end of every article that I've read, there is a long list of links and sources. So this isn't just Chris pulling stuff out of the air. I mean, I need to ask you about that because there's an incredible amount of research that goes into every piece that I've read so far. So go on. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's an important point.
yeah. So I would say, let's see, let me go through it mentally right now. I've been traveling and barely able to sleep the last few hours, so give me a little bit of grace. Let's see. Funding almost a billion. Wait, was it almost? It was hundreds of millions of dollars cut from SNAP, almost a billion.
Yeah.
Uh, let's see how many of the. I'm a lot better with the quotes than the numbers right now. We're looking at, well, the Fourth Amendment is dead now. You don't get a right to due process anymore. Deporting Americans and sending them to other countries. Uh, let's see. It's going to be tough for me to go through too many of them. I might need you to give me a few.
I'll link. I'll definitely link in the show notes. But 300,000 federal workers departed across all agencies between January and October. CBO estimates one big beautiful bill will cause 10 million Americans to lose health insurance. Medicare cuts start at 45 billion in 2026 and grow to 76 billion in 2034. Yeah, I mean it's literally 108. So we could
Yeah,
just
and
keep going.
I thought about seeing if I could do even more, but I said at a certain point I need to go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. So how
Yeah.
do you are you what is your reading habit like? Are you reading because you are following a trail and you have research to do? Or do you have interests that you pursue and are reading that sparks a piece like this and then you do kind of supporting research, or is it some kind of combination thereof?
It's a mix, absolutely. I live in this information sphere. A lot of what I do is built around finding just whatever catches my interest for the day and doggedly pursuing research on it. And when I'm pursuing research, I see a lot of this stuff right now and a lot of journalists making this error that I wish they could confront, where you have your conclusion and then you're trying to find supporting facts. And that is not what's going to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you and navigate the world more effectively. And so every day when I'm researching my articles, I'm trying to explore, this is a hypothesis, but how much information can I get? Is this accurate? Is it true? And what case can I make for it? And so I spend a lot of time on Google Scholar.
Oh,
That's where, yeah, that's probably my biggest resource actually is Google Scholar. And I'll use that to look at government. I've spent a lot of time, one of the biggest resources I've had as a researcher is the time I spent in my graduate program. And just, once I realized that you can build, like you get better grades if you have more sources and they're good sources.
Yeah.
And something about that clicked for me, and now that just is completely how I do journalism.
Yeah, yeah. What's interesting? Um, I find myself going to primary sources or the sources that are most readily available to us. But where I spend most of my time, let's say Wikipedia, for example, I don't spend a ton of time on the Wikipedia article itself. I spend a ton of time on the references. I was talking about this with a great writer, great journalist the other day, where there'll be a reference to, in that instance, we were talking about Daniel Patrick Moynihan's. Uh, Defining deviancy down. So it was just a light bulb for me. I'm like, well, why don't I go read it? So it's a great way to enrich yourself, and you may find that you get to engage with these great minds, great thinkers, great writers. Now, when you go about that process, how often, if ever, do you end up coming out the other side having a very different view than where you initially started?
Pretty often. There's a lot of days where I write 3 articles and have to throw all 3 of them out
Oh, wow.
and put in an article the next day that's late. Like I quit my job last year as a an investigator with the Department of Corrections and a corrections officer and doing a few different roles with that and with the Washington State Department of Corrections, and said, I want to focus on becoming a writer and a journalist full time. I also saw that returning to corrections had some pretty significant negative effects on my mental health and on even my personality. I was having a more difficult time laughing and that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. I'm going on a tangent. And so I said this year I'm not even going to be exercising. I calculated the number of hours that I exercise per week and mapped that out over 52 weeks and said, cool, that's that many more weeks that I can dedicate to the thing that I want to do with my life for a living. And that's what this whole year's been. And it's worked out really well. I get to just write words for a living, but people ask, how can I write as much as I do? And it's because every day I'm researching and learning, and I will, as you asked, I'll come to a conclusion. I'll realize I was wrong. It happens
Mm,
all the time, and I have to throw it in the trash. I don't even use it. It's just done. It's like, cool. I just spent 8 hours researching something that I was wrong about. Like, I had this idea about could Native Americans, could we work with tribal communities to go around tariffs? Well, it took me 8 hours to get to something that it might have taken 20 minutes for somebody else to get to. But I was like, cool, this is just dead in the water. It's done. I can't publish
interesting.
it. Wrong. Yeah.
So it's not exactly the same, but I've been asking a question, and you have a different phraseology. I've been asking a question all year about what I've been thinking of as the vertical balance of power. Now, a lot of folks, when they talk about the balance of power, they're talking about legislative, judicial, executive branches of government. When I'm thinking of the balance of power, I'm thinking of the vertical balance of power from federal, state, local. And I've been asking the question, what can state level officials, local level officials do to push back against the federal government? Now you've described this as soft secession, and it's not something that you coined, but it's something that in closed door meetings, a lot of state attorneys general are talking about. So I'd love for you to share with us what is meant by soft secession.
Well, when you're talking about that vertical power, that's
Yeah.
a lot of what it is. So I went through a period after the 2016 election where I was very dejected, and I said, I'm going to find a third party and join them. And I spent some time in the Libertarian Party, and I said, cool, can I believe in Medicare for all and be a libertarian? And they were like, yeah, go ahead, believe whatever you want.
Yeah.
And those conversations that I had during that period were incredibly formative about my understanding of power structures in the United States of America and how those can be worked to give the most power possible to people at the local level. And I look, if we didn't have 27 states run by Republicans that are truly disinterested in governance, then I would say the federal government is the way to go. Let's have, Medicare for all on the national level and this, that, and the other. But factually, I just don't want Louisiana weighing in on how Washington State runs its schools because I don't think we need to teach that dragons are real and that, and that, vaccines are evil or something. I don't know. And But even if you know what, if Louisiana wants to ban vaccines in their state, I do believe that people have the right to be wrong, but they don't have the right to hurt everybody else in their wrongness. So you need to find standards in there for how much of a population is allowed to be how wrong. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing around soft secession, I mean, frankly, something I'd love to see is more of a balkanization or a move towards like the European Union model for the
Yeah.
United States of America. But what we're working with in the soft secession model, that's a lot more palatable for elected officials, is just creating non-tax revenue streams. So public ownership of utilities or sovereign wealth funds, public ownership of broadband like Tennessee has. These are revenue streams that aren't taxes, and then they can fund parallel structures to make sure that if slash when the federal government takes away SSI, Medicaid, SNAP, we're able at the state level to have a strong functioning economy and also make sure that the residents have what they need. And this is feasible. It's truly it's most of the countries on earth do it. So we're truly not reinventing the wheel. In fact, we're the last people using a square wheel instead of a round wheel.
Yeah.
And then another one would just be soft secession wise, holding politicians accountable at every level
Right.
for corruption. Arrest corrupt politicians, put them in handcuffs, no matter what party they're in. There it can be no more hooking your friends up. There can be no more saying, I don't like this guy, but we work together on the city council or in the federal government. Also, that means not sending cases of corruption to the Department of Justice because we know that they're corrupt. We know that they're owned by the federal government. Now, the Republicans, soft secession, it's reworked federalism. It's
Yeah.
what Republicans have been doing for decades. And the fact is, they have conviction to say they think abortion is murder. They think guns, everybody should get a gun. And so they say, okay, you can call it unconstitutional, but why don't we let the courts determine that? And if the courts rule against us in 3 to 5 years, then we're going to tweak one detail and we're going to do it again because this matters. And if zealots care
Mm.
more than the rest of us, than rational people, we're cooked. As a
Right.
species, we are done if we cannot care more about what's right and what's wrong than what the law is, because that's what Republicans have been doing for decades, and it's why they're winning.
Mm. So one of the specific ideas that I was especially interested in was the idea of withholding federal tax payments. How would something like that work?
Well, I want to open up by saying, without a doubt, this will be challenged in court.
Great.
Good. Yeah, good. Good, bring it. So that's enough of it. If it can just be, let's bring it and drag it out as long as we can. We'll play that game because it's what's right to do. Now,
Yeah.
right now, we know we have the evidence. It's been documented in courts, and people haven't been held to account for misappropriation, fraud, and outright theft, even bribery. Now, if you're going to take our tax dollars that are meant for SSI, I mean, even Ronald Reagan saying you can use Social Security for other things
Yeah.
is theft. That I'm not a taxes are theft guy, but I am a if you're saying you're going to use my social security for social security and then are using it for other things, Republicans, that is theft. That is corruption. That should have people in handcuffs. That should have people in jail cells. But if you're not going to do that, then we need state governments to stand up for their citizens and say every business within our state or within our 5 states, all of you are now legally mandated to divert federal tax withholdings and send them to an escrow account. This escrow account will keep them safe and secure while we conduct an audit. And until the federal government can comply to show that they are in compliance, that they are not misappropriating and stealing our funds, then we are going to hold that money. You don't get the residents' money unless you can show us that we're paying for FEMA care that we're not receiving. It's
Yeah.
it's it's open. It's being openly discussed. And so the right thing isn't to beg a corrupt federal system to take care of us. It's to say no. We're going to do what's right and we're going to hold this money. And we'll give you the money that is supposed to be paid to you when you can show that you're actually going to manage it appropriately.
Right. Right. So one of the things that's been so disorienting is the degree to which this administration is asserting Article 1 powers. They have Article 2 powers. They don't have Article 1 powers. But it's like their appropriations. When a budget's been passed and funds have been appropriated, this particular administration is saying, "Yeah, that's cute. We're not going to do that." And he's the president is pretty explicit about it. He doesn't try to hide the fact that, well, these states didn't vote for me, so I'm not going to send you, disaster relief, for example. So I don't see, I don't know the legal mechanisms well enough, but it's a matter of accountability, and maybe you can help me get a little bit clearer in how it all works. But California, for example, if we entirely seceded from the union, we would be the fourth largest, or somewhere between the fourth and eighth
But let me
largest
tell
economy
you,
in the
if
world.
every blue state seceded and formed into one economy, we would be almost tied with China. Like it's difficult to say if every blue state did that. Yes, California would be fourth, but the blue states would be tied for first place.
Yeah, so there's a lot of leverage there. Um, but yeah, I had a problem sending in my federal tax payment this year because, ICE agents were already on the street. ICE agents were already circumventing the Fifth and the 14th Amendment of, legal residents as well as folks that didn't have proper documentation. But Fifth and 14th give every resident, everyone residing here, rights to due process. So, that alone, let alone the 108 things that you outlined, I had issue like moral objections to sending in those payments. But from a legal standpoint, I appreciated the idea. So this is coming out in your next book, right? The soft secession is, I forget what the title off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
intro to soft secession is going to be out in the next week. I finished it. We're just waiting for it. We used to publish on Amazon, and frankly, they have the easiest process, but we're done using them.
Okay.
And so now I'm just waiting for this other service, Lulu, that goes through Shopify, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing now, so I have most of a first draft for a book called Toppling Tyrants: A Guide to Defeating American Fascism, but I'm cutting articles now into booklets
Okay.
that are 6,000 to 10,000 words. The first one is Intro to Soft Secession. That's going to be out in the next 7 days on the Existentialist Republic.com. And then there's going to be follow-ups like bureaucratic or friction, the friction guide to dealing with fascism, about how to create, mostly learning from the Northern Ireland, actually, on the Troubles,
Mm.
how to create friction within an authoritarian government just so that you gum up the bureaucratic works and make it difficult for them to do their job in ways where it's like, cool, I'm going to comply. I'll pay you my taxes, but not until you send me a letter asking me to.
Mm.
Those sorts of things.
That's interesting. You're the second person I've heard refer to the Troubles. Mike Madrid said that the closest historical analogy to what we're going through right now are the Troubles, or perhaps where we're headed. Do you see it that way as well?
There's a lot of similarities, but I think Hungary, Orban's Hungary is the
Mm.
most. I mean, if we're not historical in that situation, so I guess it's a difference if you want to talk about historical or contemporary. Historical, the Troubles makes sense in a lot of ways, and there's so many lessons to learn there. The United States also, people, it says people who think that, I have people who comment on my stat work and they say I made them cry, but they thank me. And I'm like, I am hopeful, actually. There's things about the United States and about the moment that we're in that do mean that we could win. We could make things better. I don't think winning is taking the federal government back. That's just, let's take the wins where we can get them. But the Northern Irish teach us a lot of lessons, but I find a lot more through line with Orban's Hungary
Mm.
and the illiberal democracy and the idea that elections are not totally taken. I don't think we're headed towards the Russian model, besides corruption, but like raiding the government and it being run by crime family. But what I do think we're headed towards is states, even as bad as things get. Many states that are run by Democrats will still have a degree of democracy and freedom and human rights, but people are still going to get disappeared by the federal government.
Yeah, that's scary. Um, Now, there's a there's a lot of it's not just analyzing and assessing where we're at and what's happening. There are points where you advocate for what we can actually do about it. One in particular, I forget, it was an article or the something I was listening to. Learn about who's contributing to elected officials' campaigns and contact them. Can you talk a little bit more about that tactic?
Yeah, this
You
is
got a
one of the
big,
meanest
you know,
things I've ever.
shit-eating grin on your face right now. For those who are just listening, I love it.
Well, when I ran for office, I learned a couple things, and they're really mean. And I want us to have fun, and I want us to be mean. I put out that article recently about how America needs a Johnson because Lyndon B. Johnson got things done.
Yeah,
Would I want to hang out with the guy? Absolutely not. I wouldn't call him a good guy, but he did some good things.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Medicaid, Medicare, Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act.
yeah.
One term, and he did all that. And so, absolutely, I love talking about this one because it is mean and it's nasty. You can look up who donated to the politicians. I don't. It doesn't matter what state you're in, Alabama or California. You can look up who donated. You can contact them. Look at who their max donors are. Oh, hey, so and so. I saw that you donated $6,400 to X representative. I'm just wondering how you feel about them not, helping to fund SNAP because actually there was just a bill they could have voted on that would have just made sure SNAP was paid for. Find out the pressure points and push. And this is your First Amendment right. And some of those people are going to be mad at you, and some of them are going to appreciate you, and some of them are going to glad hand you, and some of them are going to threaten you. But if you have what it takes, if you have the guts for that, call them because in a day you could call people who donated $500,000 to your governor and
Wow.
you can get them. Guess what they're going to do? Let me tell you, when I ran for office, I learned you pick up the phone when max donors call because you got to fund your campaign. You got all these staff. You want them to
Yeah,
be able to pay their bills. It's a horrible, horrible thing. It's our system is built really grotesquely, but you can take advantage of that. You can exploit that system. And
mm,
then they're going to get phone calls, whoever it is. None of these politicians are your friends. I don't care who they are, how much you like them. They're not your friend. They're your employee. And they're not, the fact that we're losing means that they're doing an insufficient job. That's just a fact. They
yeah,
can be working as hard as they want, but we got to be pushing harder.
yeah.
And so contact the donors and be angry and send letters to the donors because you can get their addresses. That's public information. I'm not saying harass people. I'm absolutely not saying harass people. It is 100% legal as long as you're not saying donate to this other candidate.
Mm. Oh, okay. So there's a technicality in there that you can't
Yeah,
advocate or so what is that technicality?
that's just exactly what you said. You're not
Ah,
allowed to promote another candidate. You're just
okay.
allowed to say, hey, did you know that the person you donated X amount of dollars to did A, B, and C? How do you
Yeah,
feel about that? Are you okay with your money funding that? You do that to everybody who voted for every politician who did a max dollar, and you work your way down the list. And it's like, okay, we're meeting up every Saturday, and this Saturday we're going to call every max donor for DeSantis, and just going to call them, and we're going to leave voicemails, and we're going to take them to task,
mm,
and never apologize. Now, in my personal life, I apologize every chance I get. I did some education briefly. I learned when I was coaching, when I was wrestling coaching, I learned one of the best things you can say to a kid. I was wrong. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
When you're talking to a max donor, a politician, don't you dare apologize.
Interesting.
They're absolutely not. We cannot keep apologizing ourselves into oblivion. They are the ones who are betraying their oath of office. They are the ones who are betraying their country. And even if you think they're doing a good job, you need to get on them about what else they could be doing because the moment is here and we do not have time to dilly daddle. We must demand that we take very severe steps. And we're letting them know. When we do that, we're letting them know. We're letting their donors know too,
Yeah.
because maybe they're come on board, that they will be taken to task. We see you, see us seeing you.
So speaking of us seeing you, one of the things that you advocated for, well, I shouldn't say advocated, but that you wrote about a tactic that could be deployed is calling Democratic governors to order the arrest of ICE agents who are acting outside of their legal boundaries.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that arose, and I did some digging to find out, but there's a term, I'm not a lawyer, but qualified immunity. So what you're talking
Yeah.
about wouldn't be covered by qualified immunity. But some of these pictures that, right? So I'm going to let you talk about it, but that was really interesting to me that what we're seeing daily is illegal, unconstitutional, and we should do something about it, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's unequivocal. It's unequivocal. As a law enforcement officer, if you see somebody go, another officer go and punch somebody in the face just for the heck of it, they have committed assault and they should be in handcuffs. Now, this is what happens practically. And remember, I was corrections officer for a year and law enforcement, police officer, military police for 8 years. I
Okay.
spent time in the field. And that's not what the culture, because you don't want them to do it to you, even if you don't do bad things. It's very interesting. A lot of my work also thinks about human behavior in terms of you're not a it's not good people, bad people. It's humans conform to the shape of our vessel, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh, that's
So,
interesting. We're going to have a whole
oh
other
yeah.
podcast episode on that alone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the qualified immunity, which actually I just this conversation, this exact question, I was invited to speak to some Yale students on Monday about this exact thing. So I've been thinking about it a lot.
Okay.
So the they're doing illegal things. You don't get qualified immunity for beating the crap out of somebody or arresting, abducting them, throwing them into an unmarked van, taking away their right. You can put them in handcuffs. You can send them to a cell. Now let me tell you, there was a guy. What was it? Alabama. He just got sent to. He spent 3 months in a jail cell because he posted a Charlie Kirk death meme, and then the judge said, "You didn't do anything wrong. Go home." You're all good. Well, he spent 3 months in jail. He's never going to be compensated for. He's not going to be able to win a lawsuit. He's not going to be able to get his time back. He's suffered. He might have lost his job. Who knows? And now he's a public figure against his will because he posted a stupid meme. So, do I think that every ICE officer who beats the crap out of somebody and breaks the law and kidnaps and threatens and points a gun at somebody who's just standing there sitting on the ground, do I think that all of them are going to end up being convicted? No, we don't need them to be convicted, but we need them to be held accountable. And any police officer who does not do their job by arresting someone who they watch commit a criminal act is also going to be put in handcuffs. And if you don't do that, well, I also published an article recently about a structural program for being able to replace police departments with law enforcement services that are absolutely modeled on other countries that are currently doing this effectively. And it doesn't mean fire the whole department if you don't have to, because if you play hardball and you say, well, we're going to put a hiring freeze on your department because you guys are not meeting the expectations of our city. We're going to put a hiring freeze on you. We're going to create a compartmentalized second department that only has armed people respond to situations that would require that. But the majority of them, while they are trained in physical response tactics, have a different culture, and are being taught to actually know the law, understand the law, because the Supreme Court of the United States said that police officers don't need to know the law to enforce it. They can be fully wrong. A police officer can look at you and say, Corey, blinking is illegal. I'm going to put you in handcuffs and take you to a cell. And you're going to go to that cell and you're going to spend as long as you need to. And then a judge is going to say, you're good, go home. And you'll never get compensated back for that time. We need to radically transform how we treat criminal justice and law enforcement in this country. And it doesn't start with ICE, but it does start with putting people in handcuffs.
Hmm.
If they will not stop, your job is to enforce the law, and you will be put in handcuffs if you do not do that job.
So I think what that does is it at least creates a thought of accountability, right? Because first of all, we're talking about ICE partly because there was such a ramp up in hiring that it was too many too soon, too fast, and they've said out loud that well they'll get their training in the field, and with something this sensitive and this extreme, with the types of minimums, 3,000 arrests a day or something like that. Mistakes are going to be made, and that's the culture that's been built up now over the last whatever 9 or 10 months, as opposed to well, no, you really overstepped your bounds here. You overstepped what the Constitution allows for here, and you're going to be held accountable for that. Even if that person ends up getting off, just the fact that they could get arrested for beating the crap out of somebody, that they could get arrested for, barging into someone's house without proper warrants. That all the things that we're seeing on a daily basis, just creating that thought in an ICE officer, because not all ICE officers that's joined the force are bad people. It's just but there needs to be a sense of accountability. So that's what was appealing about about that particular. There's so much more to talk about, Chris, man. I could do this for quite some time. Um, One of the things I did want to ask you about, you've been in different situations. You've been an MP. You've been a substitute teacher. You've worn so many different hats, and I'm envisioning you in different scenarios, having conversations with people that are very different from you. So this is what we call our TP&R question. And by the way, I'm serious, man. I want to have you back because I didn't get to like even half of my questions. So, um,
Yeah, I'm
so
here
this,
for it.
thank you. This is our TP&R question. What do you think each of us can do to be able to share space with, have better conversations with, and perhaps even nurture relationships with people across our differences? So that's people who have different backgrounds and beliefs than we do, who get their news from different sources than we do. How can we do better at talking politics and religion without killing each other, or is it even possible?
Well, I'm going to start with something more broad and hopefully work my way in if I can remember, ADHD wise. So, big picture,
Yeah.
one of my favorite ideas, it comes from Richard Alpert, went by the name Ram Dass. He
Oh,
said, listening is love. And I do think that just listening to people and just letting them talk, it is a powerful, powerful way to connect with others. And even not as Ram Dass, but if you're getting CIA training or investigator training or intelligence gathering training, the number one thing they tell you is just ask questions and shut up and let people talk, and they'll tell you everything about them. Well, why do they tell you everything about them? It's because we have a deep, deep need to connect with other humans, and if we don't have that, we're unwell.
yeah.
And so much of what's not good in this country right now that's causing this illness that's in the human spirit in America, the American spirit, is we've created such an individualistic culture around consumerism, especially because consumerism says, and I buy things. I have things I want you to buy, but also we need to have conversations about how to connect with one another. And listening is number one. I actually paying attention when they talk.
Yeah, I've seen that actually. A couple of my favorite writers of the last few years, well, David Brooks has been one of my favorite writers for 25 years at least. But Monica Guzman wrote a book called I Never Thought of It That Way. And then David, in his last book, built on some of Monty's work as well as a lot of other work. His last book was How to Know a Person. What I've learned is I've seen this firsthand where there are business models, algorithms are built out and TV networks are built on a business model where if you if you incite people's sense of anger and fear and hatred, they'll keep coming back. There's a chemical reaction that we have that's similar to taking a hit of crack. So it's addictive. It sets our neuro whatever is off, and we keep on coming back because we're sort of addicted to that sense of hatred and anger and fear. Now, if you listen to someone, it's been about a month since I read this paper, but there's a similar chemical reaction that we have to being truly heard and truly understood. I don't know the exact name for it, but I just think of it overly simplistically as the love chemical, So I think there is something there because look, a lot of times we're in these conversations and we're just waiting for our turn to throw a rhetorical grenade, as opposed to somebody says something that is just so far out there, and you're just like, "Oh, that's interesting. I I didn't think of that, but how did you arrive at that conclusion? Tell me about that." You know. So there's definitely something. I think you're onto something, man. Um, so I've been
Well, and I
asking
want to
you.
mention too,
Yeah.
it's dopamine. Dopamine is you're having the anger, you're having the hate, and it gives you dopamine. And then serotonin is the I'm listening, and this makes me feel good. It makes me feel connected. And just a quick note, I don't know, I need to write about this at some point because it's been in the back of my head for a while. Is a lot of most of serotonin regulation is dependent, and this is in all vertebrates, is dependent on your perception of your value or of your place in dominance hierarchies.
Hmm.
So if you're the best, one of the best plumbers out there, you probably have really healthy serotonin levels, if you value that. But if you're a millionaire who every day wishes you were a billionaire, you probably have low serotonin levels. Or if you're a homeless person under a bridge and you're like, I'm king of the homeless, you probably have high serotonin. And so I've been thinking about that a lot because I was saw this research that said that bigots have higher serotonin levels. They have lower levels of anxiety and depression because their dopamine and serotonin levels are generally more stable because they feel superior to other people. And so they think, well, I must be doing good because I'm better than everybody who's this other color. And it's garbage,
Wow.
but it's a real delusion. Delusion exists for a reason. It can feed into you. Just there's plenty of people in mental hospitals who feel like they're doing great and also walking on the street. But the best therapists, they're not talking your ear off the whole time. They're just saying, really, if I feel like you told me this thing before, and now that doesn't feel like it really tracks with what you told me there. What's up with that? You know?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So dopamine and serotonin, I'm going to have to dig into that a little bit more, and I look forward to your coming paper or your article on that. So, I've I got lots more questions, but before we start to wind it down, do you have any questions for me?
Gosh, I thought of them. You mentioned you were going to ask me this, and I had some ideas. Oh, okay. What do you think if you were going to put something on a billboard that was going to be seen by everybody on Earth? What are some things you might want to put on there?
Oh, that's an
Take a
interesting
second if you
exercise.
want to.
Huh?
Yeah.
Um,
Take a second if you need to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That is interesting. Um, a lot of what's coming to mind is would be really cliche. Um, yeah, a lot of it would be really cliche. But it's
Sorry to, if you could sit here for 5 minutes if you want and then just edit out all the dead air. No, I'm just
huh.
kidding. Take
So
your time if you want, though.
no, no, no. I like that you put me on the spot because I haven't been frozen that way. Even though I've been asked some great questions, I haven't been frozen that way. A billboard that everybody on Earth would see. Um, I think I'd want it to be a message of encouragement and a reminder, but also something that is um, uh, that cuts through the clutter somehow, where it's just like you have to stop and oh wait, what? So it would definitely be something along the lines of so I I went to New Orleans last weekend, and a buddy of mine who was very successful in LA, Hollywood, had a great agency and did all kinds of things. He moved back to New Orleans, and he discovered Jesus. But he's like such a character. He wants to be on this show because he's like, you haven't had a gay Christian on your show yet. He's my friend Damon. So his and he's right, I haven't yet, but maybe I have. I don't know. Anyway, he wants to be on the show, but his store is like all Jesus stuff. But it's like he does it so well because it's like t-shirts that say Jesus loves you. No, really, like it's just different enough to be disorienting. So I'd want there to be something that is leans into our pluralistic that isn't exclusive and leans into our differences uh, and is reassuring, but different enough for people. So it's like it's going to be okay. Or I was reading something about a meditation practice where you let the thought in, then you let the thought be, and then you let the thought go. You know, let it in, let it be, let it go. Oh, maybe that's what it would be. Let it in, let it be, let it go. Um, because it's just a thought. So maybe that okay. That's what I'm going to stick with for now. Thank you for allowing me to go through the process, but I also reserve the right to revisit this exercise. And by the way, so you caught me so off guard. So I'm going to tell you a secret. So I interview a lot of people for jobs, and one of the things that we do for all the different companies is at the very end we set up this really big, huge, important question. It's the last question of the whole interview, and we go, now tell me a joke. And it's so interesting to see people's how they process. Um, and sometimes, and we say, listen, you can tell X-rated joke, any kind of angry joke, whatever, just tell me a joke. And it's interesting. Some people can come up with it. And we're not really looking for how funny the joke is. We're looking for how the person processes a question that they weren't expecting. Can they think on their
Yeah.
feet? Can they do it with a sense of humor? So, um, but then if somebody completely stumbles all over themselves, we say, do me a favor. We're going to meet again. Next time you come back, bring us a joke. So I'm going to reserve the right, let it in, let it be, let it go, to come up with something even better than that. Is that cool?
I'd love that. I really look forward to coming back. I want to answer the joke question. Am I allowed to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You feel free to cut it if you want, but so this one, it's more. I used to do just a little bit of stand-up comedy, and I loved feeling like educating. I like bringing like a teacher
Yeah.
mindset and saying, "Here's a cool bit of information I found." So I'm, like I said, my mom's side of the family's Jewish, and so a lot of people don't know if you're Jewish, there's a ceremony. Somebody comes and does the circumcision, and it's they're called a moil.
Yeah.
It's ancient tradition, and I actually, and when I was growing up, my moil was, it was a crazy situation, just really luck. It was Steven Spielberg who did my circumcision, and now my dick's a director's cut. So
I like it. Oh man. Okay. All right. I like it. Um, so I grew up very observantly Jewish, but I became a Christian about 20 something years ago. So I'm very familiar and having, trying to find a moil to have the bris for my boys after I had become a Christian, it was quite a task, but yeah, so I like that. I'll remember that.
Steven Spielberg didn't do my circumcision to be clear.
Yeah, I was thinking, was he a okay? This is where we're going. All right, I like it. Um, so before we go, how can we follow you, find the Existentialist Republic, and just all the great work that you're doing?
You just Google the Existentialist Republic. You'll find the Substack, or you can go to the website. It's the same info, and that's the best way to do it.
Great.
Get out there. I'm putting out some articles and going to keep putting out stuff. And I just, every day I'm really, the number of people who come to me and tell me just how enthused they are to actually take real actionable steps to make the world a better place. It fills me with a lot of hope. So I hope I hear from some of the people who watch this.
Yeah, speaking of Judaism, you're doing Tikkun Olam, man. You're participating in a healing project. So I'm so glad to connect with you. I was so glad to discover your work, like I said, and this has been great. We did cover a lot. Is there any? And this will happen again. I promise that. But is before we go, is there anything important we haven't discussed this time that you'd like to add?
I don't have any plugs left or anything like that. I just hope people watching this take care of themselves. I know things can feel really dark.
Yeah,
I went through some real tough times, feeling like the suffering of the world was about to increase exponentially. And it is an act of rebellion and defiance in these situations to find joy and love and connection. And when you build that community and you find joy, even in activism, laugh while you make those phone calls to the donors. And
yeah,
also your activist friends, have them over for a pizza party, play some Dungeons and Dragons. Take care of this, because if you don't take care of this, then everything else is bad.
yeah.
So
I hear
that's
you,
just my
man.
final message.
I hear
Yeah.
you. Absolutely. That's a good word. Chris, this is great, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. I really do hope that this is the first of many conversations that we have. Thanks for doing this today.
Thanks for having me, Corey. This was really a pleasure.
You bet. As always, thanks again to the Village Square, Maze Wealth Management. Please be sure to check out more info on our sponsors in the show notes. And if you dig what we're doing here, remember to follow the show, write the review, and be sure to check us out on all the socials, especially Substack, where Chris is doing a lot of great work as well. I'm easy to find on everything at Corey S. Nathan, at Corey. S is in Sam, Nathan. Now go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.